We have just finished the accommodation section of the IEP. Just to review, we have already discussed the options of assessment, and now we're going to go into the actual participation guideline forms for the alternate assessment. We have also reviewed the IEP, the documents in the IEP, and this is the section that we are on now. So we need to determine if Hunter qualifies for the alternate assessment. The first thing I need to ask is if the parents did receive a copy of the parent handbook with your notice, and if you have questions about this document.
No questions.
Okay, so now the next step that we're going to take is we're actually going to go into the document itself. I'm going to be asking several different questions, and not only I, but there will be more people at the table since there's regular ed teachers, special ed teachers, speech, OT, those types of people are at the table, and we even have an outside agency with us today. So we need to make sure that everybody talks about Hunter, because we need to know everything about Hunter so we can make sure that we put him in the right path. All right, so when you're looking at the document, if you'll get that document out, we've already passed that out. The first question says, the parent was provided that copy, and you all said that you all had the copy and it was prior to the meeting. So I'm going to mark prior to the meeting you received that, and you stated you had no questions over the document. The second thing is, and this is very, very important, is we need to talk about the difference between the alternate high school diploma and the regular high school diploma. There is a very, very big difference. The alternate assessment diploma is not a regular diploma. This means that the child that is on the alternate diploma may not, unless they change in the future, be able to have a job, because most agencies ask that or require that they have a high school diploma to work in their agency. So I want to make that clear at this time. That is the biggest difference between those two diplomas, the diploma tracks. And are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. We just want to make sure. And if you turn over to the next section, it says, has a student been determined to be a student with disability eligible to receive special education services under IDEA? IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We have, prior to this, we have determined that, so I'm going to go ahead and mark yes for that section. Is the current IEP, which is an educational, individual education program, in place or being developed for that student? We have already developed his IEP. Like I said, we've already gone through this, and we are now on this section right here. So we have developed his IEP. We are now going to mark yes for that section. Okay, we turn the page. The students demonstrated cognitive functioning and adaptive behavior in the home, school, and community environments are significantly below age expectations, even with program modifications and accommodations. Here we will need to discuss that with members at the table. Remember, we are looking at the three areas, which is the home, the environment, and the school. So we all need to chime in. Anybody want to go first?
I guess since it's listed first, we'll talk a little bit about, imagine home. Hunter does chores at home, as far as what are some things, setting the table.
Yeah, and bringing the laundry down, and he'll take out the garbage for us.
Yeah, we got to watch him. Be very cautious with that though, because he don't really see any danger. I mean, it's like there's nothing that he's afraid of. So, and I think that's a big concern of ours in the community as well, not just in the home environment, but in the community as well, because, you know, she takes him several places, and he has these experiences within our community, but just being constantly aware of his safety is a big concern.
Yes, when we go to these places, we have to make sure that he has constant supervision. We have to stay right with him. It's not like he can go and explore on his own. So we worry about that in a school setting as well.
I know that we need to make sure we put in our notes that the parents do have concerns with Hunter because he has no fears and that he needs constant supervision. Anyone else want to discuss the adaptive behavior?
Hunter, I see Hunter for a variety of mental health concerns. He has anxiety, depression, and a mood disorder. And over the time I've worked with him, I've found that he benefits from a variety of calming strategies. And those would be like bouncing on an exercise ball, playing a drum, and or taking a walk. He seems to benefit from those and calm down.
Yes, and Hunter seems to be making progress with feeding and toileting and dressing, but he still needs some assistance with that, but he is making pretty steady progress with that.
He does at times overeat as well, and eats too fast sometimes, so it's another
Yes.
concern that we have. And you said that has to have, assistance with eating and toiletry and things like that. We do see that at home as well.
We have an assistant that actually helps him with some of those things that you were talking about, especially when he tries to overcrowd his mouth. We're worried that he may get choked. So we do have an assistant that's with him during that time, during the feeding time. We do have that. Do we have anyone else that wants to talk about the cognitive disability?
I have his previous IQ scores. They were 50 in the 2nd grade, 48 in the 5th grade, and 40 in the 8th grade, and his current IQ is 40. The adaptive scores, he's currently at 40, and previously he was below 50, so those are pretty consistent in the same range. As far as his present levels go, he consistently performs below same age peers. He is able to identify science and social studies sight words with 50% accuracy, identify shapes at 65%, and he can do 1-digit addition and subtraction with 85% accuracy also. He is using 70 to 80% price match, and we are currently working on next dollar strategy with Hunter, and he can perform that skill with 75% accuracy. As far as reading, comprehension, main idea and characters was 65%. Identifying the setting and plot was 35%. He can identify 60 Dolch sight words on the pre-primer level. And he enjoys listening to adapted stories from his peers. But consistently across all content areas, he's
Okay.
below same age peers.
Okay, so we have this documented, and we're going to go on to the next question. And it says, ARC reviewed current and longitudinal data across settings, which is at the home and in the environment, the community environment, and at school, in all academic areas and adaptive behaviors to inform the ARC decision. So you actually went over the longitudinal part. You went over the different IQ scores that he has had. He's had 4 of those, and they are consistent as well with his adaptive behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and mark yes on that section. Does a student require extensive individual direct instruction across multiple settings, utilizing intensive accommodations, modifications, and assistive technology to access and make progress in the Kentucky academic standards and to maintain and generalize learning?
I can speak across the multiple settings. As far as introducing concepts to Hunter, we usually start in the classroom and then move those concepts to a CBI, community-based instruction environment, to try to build those across multiple settings. And he still requires direct instruction to be able to obtain those skills.
Yeah, and Hunter also requires a lot of verbal prompting and also a lot of physical prompting, specifically out in the community with community-based tasks.
I think one of our general overall concerns is that Hunter doesn't have a constant functional communication system. He needs prompting to initiate conversation. He is starting to say hi and wave occasionally, but right now he's still using multiple modalities, meaning he'll use gestures, he has an augmentative communication device, and some vocals that he'll say. But he does have to have supervision and someone there sort of to interpret and to assist with meeting his daily wants and needs.
When he's at home, how does he communicate mainly at his
Well,
home?
I just get him on weekends and certain weekdays and things like that. Try to spend as much time as possible with him. If he wants something or wants my attention or something, he'll reach out and touch my hand or my arm or you know, gestures and things like that. So I mean, it is difficult for him to communicate what he wants or what he needs. So
Unless he can point at something, he does a lot of pointing if he's wanting something.
Or he'll bring you the item or
Yes.
take you to what he needs or what he wants.
Yes.
So it happens across the settings. Okay. Okay, so we will,
And also in the classroom, he uses adapted writing utensils to help him write. And then also during the cafeteria lunch and breakfast time, he utilizes adapted utensils there in that setting as well to help him have a better grasp, just because his fine motor skills are limited and sometimes he has a hard time holding on to the fork or the spoon or knife, and also the writing utensil. So we use adaptations for that in the classroom.
yeah, I've noticed the larger markers or whatever, if he's doing a writing task or something like that. I mean, you know, at home. You were talking about some calming strategies and things like that. He likes listening to music as well, so I mean, that could be something that may help calm him. You know, and the anxiety, I mean, he just gets really nervous about things. So it's a concern as well.
Yeah, he likes a lot of that deep pressure, and usually he does that for himself. He pushes on his head, or he'll grasp his hands tightly, and that seems to be very calming for him. Especially in the classroom when there's loud noises and those kinds of things, he doesn't really like those. So he'll do those calming strategies for himself. And then a lot of times he'll seek that sensory movement and that deep pressure as well in the classroom.
okay, so we see that that's happening across the settings, so we're going to go ahead and mark yes. Turn the page. It says, did the ARC carefully consider each of these items? So let's look at these. It's a pretty lengthy list. Excessive or extended absences. I have noticed that he's hardly never absent. So we know that we can go ahead and mark that. Disability related to visual or auditory disabilities, emotional behavior disabilities, specific learning disabilities, speech and language impairment. So when we're looking at those, we can see that that is a plus for him. He does relate, but he relates a little differently from his other same age peers. And we do know that he has these anxieties, but it is not due to emotional behavior. It's due mainly to frustrations and those types of things. The next one is native language. We do talk in English as well as you all talk in English at home. So that is in his native language. He is not an English language learner student, so that will be one that we can actually go ahead and mark. Predetermined poor performance on grade level assessment. We know that Hunter does have issues with assessments and he is not on grade level. So we know that it's not a predetermined that he has the poor performance. We see that in the classroom as well. The student displays disruptive behaviors or experiences emotional duress during testing. He does have anxiety, we know that, and we know during testing time he does get a little bit frustrated, and he has a device that he uses for communication. However, and it's got 4 areas that can be completed on there. There's only 2 of them there. Speech therapists may want to talk about that device, but he can use the 2 sections on that device. Administrator decisions, it's not just left up to the administrator, it's left up to all of us, because each of us play a different role in Hunter's lives, and each of us know a little bit something different about Hunter. The second one is the ARC's decision for the student to participate in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment is not primarily the result of any of those that was listed above.
I think Hunter does great in the classroom, and you'd mentioned his anxiety from before, and we talked a little bit about those calming strategies, and he actually has some sensory activities that he goes through 5 times a day so that he can be more calm and ready to learn in the classroom.
I'm one of Hunter's teachers, and I work real close with his special ed teacher, and some of the standards that they have to learn as a 10th grader are they have to be able to read a text, and they have to be able to determine a theme from it. They have to be able to analyze characters, and he, in math and reading, he is below his grade level, but we work together really closely, and he performs well with what she puts in front of him that's on his level.
Yeah, I think we understand that he is not up to what peers are. I think some of our concerns, and we've hit those up in the IEP, and just want to reiterate, is Hunter is learning life skills that he's going to be able to use, you know, and in case something happens, that he has to be out and being able to take care of his own self. And I like you were talking about the money and the X dollar up, I guess it was, or whatever, and things like that. And he does know some community words, as
Yes, he
we've
does.
experienced. You know, several of those things. I mean, you know, while we've been out in the community and while she's had him out and stuff. So those are things that I'm concerned with. You know, can't speak for the mother, but those are some things.
Well, as a mother, you know, our children, we worry about their safety, and so that's something we want to address, is that Hunter is kept safe, and hopefully he'll learn things that he shouldn't do, and be aware of things that are dangerous to him.
And we understand that. We understand that, and that's one reason why we do have an instructional assistant in the classroom with him, to make sure that he is safe. If we go on field trips, those types of things, he has the assistant right with him to make sure that he doesn't wander off or whatever. So we are concerned with his safety as well, because we understand what you're talking about. When we turn the page, it says, the student meets the participation guidelines for Kentucky Alternate Assessment as a student with a significant cognitive disability and is eligible to receive instruction based upon alternate academic achievement standards and participate in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment as indicated above. We've already heard his teacher talk about his cognitive ability. At the present time, it's 40. So we know that is a significant disability, and we understand that we've got all the data that everyone has talked about here today that shows us that it supports that he actually needs to be on the alternate assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and mark yes.
Yes, I agree. It's a good choice for Hunter.
Okay. The ARC reviewed and completed the learner characteristic inventory for the individual student, and his teacher may want to talk about that, but we do have the learner characteristic inventory. It consists of many different questions. And we may just go through that just for everyone at the table to be aware of what these learner characteristics are.
Number 1 is that his primary disability, and Hunter currently has diagnosed with cerebral palsy, autism, depression, mood disorder. Number 2, is your student's primary language a language other than English? Let us know. Number 3, what is the student's primary classroom setting? And Hunter is currently in regular school, and he receives specially designed instruction in a separate classroom, and is able to return to the special class for most of the day. Number 4 is his expressive communication. Do you want to address that one?
Yeah, he does have some intentional communication. When he wants to get your attention, he'll come over and touch you, or if he wants something within his field, he'll bring it to you or take you to whatever it is he wants or needs. But like I said earlier, he doesn't have anything consistently that he uses yet. We're still working on PECS, the picture exchange communication system, where he has a variety of pictures and he can bring one to you and show you exactly what he wants. And he's also we're also still working on an augmentative communication device, whereas it's a 4-square grid, and he can, there's some pre-programmed messages, and he'll touch that, but he still has a lot of difficulty initiating that communication and a lot of difficulty expressing his wants and needs.
And he can use the sentence starters also, right?
He uses a sentence starter, but I don't know consistently how much he uses it and how much possibly vocabulary he understands, because I feel like it's a little limiting because it just has the 2 or 4 squares, and it depends on what we've programmed into that for him to use. So.
And number 5 is also speech. He doesn't use oral speech to communicate. Number 6, does he use an AAC device? And that is yes.
He does, but being consistent with it and using it across all environments he's not 100%.
Number 7 is the receptive language. And you kind of talked about that already, about what you feel like he's able to understand.
He'll do gestures and pictures, and he can follow simple directions, but as far as a lot of the classroom and the language used in the classroom, it's very difficult for him to follow more than 1 or 2 simple directions.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed is if you give him motor directions such as open or hold or carry, some of those words like that, he can really understand those and actually do what you're asking him to do.
Okay, so number 8 is the actual motor. The requires adaptation to support motor functioning.
Yeah, and he does require a lot of adaptation, such as the bingo markers to indicate his answer. Some of those things, built up utensils, but he does quite well with those utensils, and he's making steady progress with those.
Good. Number 9 is engagement. And he is able to respond with social interaction, but doesn't initiate or sustain that social interaction. Would everybody agree with that? Number 10 is the health issues and attendance.
And again, I looked that up, and he's got very good attendance, so he's probably the first one attends at least 90% of the school
And
days.
his health we would probably list as well.
Yes.
Yeah. 11 is for reading, and he is able to read basic sight words. It's 60. He's at 60 Dolch sight words, and able to do simple sentences with the sentence starters, and directions and bullets. Number 12 is mathematics, and he is able to do the computational procedures with or without a calculator using only single-digit addition and subtraction. He has a little bit more difficulty if we start adding in upper numbers above 9. So That's the end of the learning characteristics inventory.
Okay. So this is the last question that we have in our guidelines, and it says, is receptive and expressive communication addressed in the IEP? And yes, it was addressed in the IEP today. Are there any questions or concerns that you may have that you want to address with us today? Does anybody else have any questions or concerns we need to talk about at this time?
Well, I look forward to serving Hunter with occupational therapy this year, and I'm sure we're going to make lots of progress.
Okay. Then the meeting is adjourned. We thank you for coming in. We appreciate you all's input.
Thank you.